halfway through the book of James, and so far, we've seen James showing believers what a true faith looks like. He's really been hitting hard on that. This is what true faith really looks like. And if you've missed any of the previous messages, don't worry. They're online, they're on podcast. You can go back and you can listen to any of them, and you can get caught back up. Last week, we looked at how true faith speaks. How it speaks. It speaks in a way that brings life. That's what true faith does. True faith coming out of the mouth of a person who is a believer speaks life. And we looked at that, how our words have the ability to direct. They're very powerful. They can direct people. They can direct our own lives. They also have the power to destroy, but they also have the power to delight. They have the power to build up in someone's life or our own life. And a true follower of Jesus is to bring life with their words. So that was last week. And today we're going to look at how a true faith seeks wisdom. So if you're taking notes, that's going to be the title of the message today. Faith seeks wisdom. All right? Faith seeks wisdom. How many of you guys grew up in the greatest decades ever, known as the 80s and 90s? Grew up in the 80s and yes, greatest. Now listen, I grew up. I'm convinced. I grew up in a time where we had the best music, where we had the best movies. Like that's just, I don't know, maybe because it's nostalgia for me. How many of you guys agree that whatever decade you grew up in, it had the best music? Anybody in the room? Okay. Ooh, some of you are like, I hated the music of my decade. Okay, well, that's fine. Well, I grew up watching some really amazing 80s and 90s movies. Some of my favorite on my list are like Back to the Future, if you guys know that, Ghostbusters, like those movies. But also one of my favorite movies from when I was younger was The Karate Kid. Like I'm talking about OG Karate Kid, all right? Not the newer stuff that's been coming out. Those are okay, but I'm talking like OG Karate Kid, okay? And I grew up watching that, and it was just a really good movie. And here's why I kind of bring that up. You had this guy, all right, named Daniel LaRusso, all right, and he's kind of trying to find his way, right? He gets picked on, he gets bullied, he gets beat up, and he's trying to find his way, and then he ends up under the mentorship of Mr. Miyagi. That is correct. Ends up under the mentorship of Mr. Miyagi, a karate instructor. But Mr. Miyagi was way more than a karate instructor, all right? Way more. He taught Daniel other things as well, like what? Patience. He taught him discipline. He taught him character. Remember the whole wax on? That's right. Paint the fence, right? You guys remember that? The whole thing. And it seemed pointless at first, but what Miyagi was shaping Daniel into was more than a fighter. He was shaping him into a man of self-control and a man of humility. And if you remember the movies at all, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because that's who Miyagi was. He was a man of exceptional character. He was a man of incredible self-control, but also humility. Then you had the opposite side, all right? And this was Cobra Kai, right? This was, I think I have a photo of this. Did we already show it? These guys, right? That's John Kreese there on the left. Can you just see like which one's a jerk and which one isn't? Just by looking at the photo, right? Then you have this other side, and they're known as Cobra Kai. Their sensei also had an abundance of knowledge. He had a ton of knowledge. Both of those senseis had a ton of knowledge, right? He could teach fighting techniques extremely well, but his philosophy was built on pride and aggression. That's what his philosophy was built on. Strike first, strike hard, no mercy. That was what their whole thing was about. Both instructors were extremely knowledgeable, but if I asked you which one carried a true wisdom, I think we'd probably all agree that it was Mr. Miyagi, who carried a tremendous amount of wisdom. Why? Because one's wisdom led to destruction, division, and chaos, and the other's wisdom led to peace, unity, and order. And that's really where we see true wisdom, right? And so this is really kind of the message that James is trying to get across. And I'm sure when James wrote this, he was like, man, I hope somebody uses a Karate Kid illustration in the future, because that would really drive home the point. But this is really kind of his whole thing here, because in chapter 3, verses 13 to 18, which we just read, God is going to use him to open our eyes to what true wisdom is. Like everybody has on a side, they have wisdom. Like you've got Sensei Kreese, you've got Sensei Miyagi, and they both have wisdom, right? But what is a true wisdom? What is a wisdom that we need to be looking for that is going to lead to something good? And what's a counterfeit wisdom? And so that's really what he's getting at in this passage. So we're going to dig in a little bit deeper, verse 13. So let's look at this. Verse 13, it's right there. It'll be on the screen, but also if it'll be right there in your scriptures. And what I'm using is the ESV, by the way, the English Standard Version. You do not have to use the same version as me. In fact, I would say use a different version so that you can kind of understand, because we're taking a language that this was not written in. This is written in Greek. We're taking it and translating it into English. And so I've got the English Standard Version. If you've got another one, look along, because it all helps us understand it a little bit better. So here's what it says in 13. Who is wise and understanding among you? By his good conduct, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. So if you're taking notes, point number 1, I want you to write this down. True wisdom is humble. True wisdom is humble. All right? So he starts off and he asks a question to his audience of Christians. Okay? He asks this question: who claims to be wise? Who? Like who of you think that you are wise, and who claims to understand the things of God? Who claims to have understanding? He says, first of all, I want you to understand what wisdom really is and what it brings about. And I want to talk about that word wise just for a second. I'm not sure if you've ever thought about this, but knowledge and wisdom are not the same thing. Do you guys agree? Knowledge and wisdom are not the same thing. Just because you know something doesn't mean that you are wise. How many of you guys know a know-it-all that doesn't seem to be real wise? We know those people, right? So knowledge and wisdom aren't the same thing. So write this down. This is good stuff. Knowledge is what you know. Wisdom is what you do with what you know. Okay? Knowledge is what you know, but wisdom is what you do with what you know. So he says, who is wise? He says, let's take a test then. He says, look at your actions, look at your conduct, look at your works. What do they say about you? Would your conduct, would your works, would your actions be defined as good, first of all? And that word good, it just means, in the Greek, that word means selfless. It means harmonious. Somebody who brings harmony, right? And it means beautiful. That's what he's saying. He's like, look at your actions. Are they beautiful? Are your actions harmonious? Do they bring harmony? Are they selfless actions? He says, then do they come from meekness, is what he says, which is a word that means someone who carries great strength, but it's restrained. It's restrained, it's submitted to something, and that something would be the Holy Spirit. It's a humble strength. That's what meekness of wisdom. True wisdom, as defined by God, carries a trait with it, and that trait is humility. True wisdom carries a trait of gentleness. It carries a trait of kindness. It carries a trait of conduct that is not self-seeking. I trust you know what I'm talking about whenever we talk about a trait that is self-seeking. And he's going to talk about that more in just a second in verse 14. Let's look at that right now, because he's going to describe what a false wisdom is. He says, but if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, at your motivation, is what he's saying, don't boast about being wise. Don't boast about being understanding and having knowledge. He says, don't boast and be false to the truth. Because it's not a true wisdom at all. So he's saying, if you boast about being wise or having understanding, yet have these things, he says, I wouldn't be too quick to brag, because it's actually a false wisdom. It's a counterfeit wisdom that you carry. Counterfeit wisdom is a wisdom that often looks like being confident. Like, you can miss counterfeit wisdom. And I think that we miss counterfeit wisdom all the time. We look at certain people and we're like, wow, that is so wise. But we've got to be able to understand what counterfeit wisdom looks like. It can look like being confident. It can look like somebody who's driven. It can look like somebody who's ambitious. It can look like that person who's like, I get up at 5 o'clock every morning and I go work out and I do all the things and then I do this stuff and then I've got this much money. Like, it can look like a driven, ambitious person. Counterfeit wisdom can. But underneath, it's fueled by envy and selfishness. Those are harder to see. Sometimes people show their true colors, But sometimes those are a little bit harder to see. So if you're taking notes, point number 2, false wisdom destroys. False wisdom destroys. He uses 2 descriptors here. He says that a counterfeit wisdom, at the heart of it, is bitter jealousy. What does it mean to be bitterly jealous? It's that sharp resentment that you have when somebody else is doing well. Have you ever seen a person who's bitterly jealous? Like they hate it when somebody else is succeeding. At least if they're having trouble succeeding. But as long as they're the one who's succeeding more, they're fine. But if they meet someone who's succeeding more than them, they harbor this bitter jealousy and they don't get along with those type of people. Right? This person usually has trouble authentically celebrating other people's achievements. We probably all know someone like that. It also comes with another descriptor is selfish ambition. And we all know what that is. That's the drive to promote yourself at any cost. And I'm sure that we can think of people like that as well. Even if it means stepping on other people. Promoting yourself at any cost. Everything they do, and think about this, even charitable things have an air of selfish promotion about it. I'm sure you guys know, like I'm a cynical person whenever it comes to a lot of things. And whenever I see like a celebrity who is like talking about their charity, the first thing I think is this is just for you to look good. Like there's selfish ambition at the heart of that, right? And I know you guys are like, Greg, that's so judgmental. It very much is. Yeah, it is. And I'm just like, I really want to know, like, is this genuine? Because how many of you guys just have been burned by way too much disingenuous stuff? I mean, we all have. And so, something that I think that we need to think about is that whenever we're doing things, we really need to take a look at what is the motivation behind it. What is the motivation behind why we do the things that we do? And James is saying here, that person may look wise because they're so driven, because they're so confident, and because they're so ambitious, but in reality, it's just merely deception. But that's often who we look to for wisdom in the world. And I think that's interesting. A lot of times, that's who we give credit to, right? These types of people, we read their books, we listen to their seminars, we ask their advice, we watch their TV shows, we follow their social media, we listen to their podcasts, we sit in their churches. Yes, there are some pastors who fit this. Someone who is loud or high-ranking or flamboyant or outgoing or rich or famous or smart about stuff or has flashy answers and they're really quick-witted. Counterfeit wisdom looks appealing. And I'm not saying everybody who has those descriptors have a counterfeit wisdom, but I'm saying you can miss it. You can miss that stuff. But that type of wisdom is to be avoided. We're supposed to avoid that type of wisdom because it's going to lead to danger. I follow this guy on social media who goes around and he interviews some of the most richest entrepreneurs in the country, really the world. And he goes around to these people and he asks their advice on how they got rich, how much money they made in a year. He asks them all kinds of questions, right? And he also asks them towards the end of it, what advice would you give to the younger generation? He always asks that question. What advice would you give to the younger generation? And I really don't listen to find out how much money these people have made. Like that's not why I'm actually more intrigued by the demeanor of the person who is supposed to be wise and who he's interviewing to say, these are wise people. I'm more intrigued by their demeanor and the answer to what they would tell the younger generation. I care more about that answer than I care about how they made their first million. Because it tells me more truth about who they are as a person. And I don't care how rich that person is. If what's revealed in their answer is bitter jealousy and selfish ambition, I'm not going to take their advice on anything. Because it's actually counterfeit wisdom. And I don't want to take their advice on that kind of stuff because we're going to find out in a second where counterfeit wisdom actually leads. I want to know, are they self-promoting? Are they arrogant? Or do they seek meekness in their strength? Have you guys ever met like somebody who is extremely wealthy, extremely rich, extremely powerful, yet they're just meek and they're humble? Don't you lean in a little bit more to what that person says? I think we all do. We all kind of gravitate toward, we all like the flashy person who's all flamboyant and everything. We're like, oh, that's so much fun. But there's just something about that person who's a little bit quieter than the rest, who isn't the first person to speak. They're usually the last person to speak, and everything that comes out of their mouth, you actually want to like get out your phone and take a note because you're like, man, that's really good. So we can tell the difference between wisdom and true wisdom and counterfeit wisdom. And those are the types of people that we want to be. Those are the kind of people we want to be. Those are the types of people we want to learn from when it comes to the things of God. Guys, there are a lot of preachers out there. There are a lot of podcasts out there. There are a lot of things out there. Guys, the people that we want to listen to are the people who whenever we learn from the things of God, we want those people who don't have the counterfeit wisdom. We've got to discern. God has given us a spirit of discernment. We all need to go in and discern what type of wisdom does this person have, so that I know what's spilling out of their mouth. Can it be trusted? And guys, I hope that I never become a teacher who is arrogant or bitterly jealous or self-seeking, okay? I hope I never do that. And if I ever become that way, or if I'm that way now and I'm just blind to it and you guys are sitting there going, actually, we need to have a talk, right? I give every person in this room my permission to go full New Yorker on me, all right? Just do that, please. Like, hold me accountable to those things, all right? Listen, Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 says this: do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit. It says, but in humility, count others more significant than yourself. That's the way that the Lord has called us to live our lives. Not out of selfish ambition or conceit, but count other people more significant than yourselves. And by the way, as we talk through all these things about the positive side of wisdom, you're gonna really see one person hopefully enter your mind of everything, and it's Jesus. He was the perfect example of all of this. But verse 15, as he goes on, he says this. This is still under the false wisdom destroys. Verse 15, this is not the wisdom. That type of wisdom is not the wisdom that comes down from above. But it's earthly, it's unspiritual, it's demonic. Earlier in James 1:17, he said, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights. Every good gift is from above. Every perfect gift is from above. The wisdom that produces bitter jealousy and selfish ambition that comes from those two things is not the wisdom that is the good gift from God. It's not the gift that comes from above. That's not a wisdom that God wants us to have. Why? Because it destroys us, and God is very protective of us. He doesn't want us to be destroyed by anyone, and he doesn't want us to be destroyed by our own selves. That's why he sent Jesus to die for us. He's very protective, and he gives us a great wisdom, but this wisdom is not it. This wisdom that produces bitter jealousy and selfish ambition, God doesn't have anything to do with. First of all, he says it's earthly, meaning from the mind of sinners, from a sinful, selfish human being. He's like, that type of stuff doesn't come from God. That type of stuff is conjured up in your own mind. And think about it for a second, because that type of wisdom is short-sighted. It only thinks about the temporal. All right, it only thinks about the here and now. It's focused on the temporary, and it's void of any thought about God, which is the things above. It's void of all of that. And Paul told us in Colossians chapter 3, verse 1 through 3, it says this: even then you have been raised to new life. He's talking to believers. He's like, hey, you've been given a new life. You've been raised to new life with Christ. So seek the things that are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. He says, set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on the earth. So that type of wisdom, he says, first of all, is an earthly wisdom. He says it comes from the mind of man. And then he says, and it's also unspiritual, which is a word that just means apart from God. He's like, that kind of wisdom, it's completely apart from the creator of the universe, the one who's all-knowing and all-powerful. And then the third one, he says, he takes it even further. He says that it's demonic. And I love the progression there. He's like, first of all, that kind of wisdom is earthly. Second of all, it's completely unspiritual. You know what? Actually, it's demonic, is what he says there. And in other words, it has Satan's fingerprints all over it. It's completely void of the Lord's fingerprints. Guys, we've got to think about, who are we listening to? Do we want the wisdom that we're receiving, whether you're at church, whether you're at work, whether it's about your finances, whether it's about your family, whatever it is, whose fingerprints do you want on that wisdom going into your life? Do you want God's fingerprints on that, or do you want Satan's fingerprints on that? That's how serious this is, because I'm sure that all of us has taken wisdom, some sort of wisdom at some point in time that actually wasn't of the Lord, and maybe you knew it at the time and you took that wisdom and it led to something that wasn't so good. He's going to elaborate on that more in just a second. But I think back to the Garden of Eden, right? Satan is extremely knowledgeable. Would we all agree with that? Extremely knowledgeable. He's very cunning and he's wise in his own plan. And he even sounded reasonable to Eve. He said things like, did God really say that? God didn't really say that, right? He also says, come on, you'll be like God. You'll be just like him. But Satan's wisdom is a counterfeit wisdom. It's earthly, it's unspiritual, it's demonic. It's full of bitter jealousy, it's full of selfish ambition. And Eve listened to it. And now we're all like, thanks, right? Thanks a lot for that, right? Because it led to sin, and it led to shame, and it led to death, and it permeated every generation that would follow. Look, somebody can have degrees, they can have experience, they can have good instincts, and be an incredible communicator. They can be so articulate. But if God's Spirit isn't leading it, it's not the wisdom that will lead you to the good gifts that are from above. It won't do it. James tells us what it will lead to, actually, in verse 16. He says, for where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. That's where it will lead. That wisdom that has the fingerprints of Satan on it, that is earthly wisdom, that is unspiritual, and he even says demonic. He says it's going to lead to disorder in your life. And it's going to lead to every vile practice. When he says every vile practice, where there is counterfeit wisdom, other ungodly actions and practices are also probably hanging around. All right? Like if you're looking at something and you're going, I don't know if this is the way that I need to go. What's surrounding it? Is it godly things surrounding it, or is it ungodly things surrounding it? Because that's probably a good indicator of ungodly wisdom in that direction. Because ungodly wisdom, that type of wisdom, it also hangs around with every other vile practice as well. And so whenever you're looking at a person and you're going, man, I wonder if I should take their advice on this. I wonder if I should take the wisdom from this on whatever it is that you're thinking about. Look at the rest of their life. Are there other vile practices hanging out? Because if so, I probably wouldn't mess with that. I probably wouldn't. Just something to think about. And then he says also, where that jealousy and selfish ambition exists, there's going to be disorder. Counterfeit wisdom brings disorder. It brings disorder to your life. It brings disorder to your family's life. It brings disorder to everything and everyone that it touches. It brings confusion. You ever been in a moment where you're just like, I'm so confused? It brings instability. It brings division. It brings pain. It brings hurt. It brings betrayal and all kinds of corruption. This is the fruit of earthly false wisdom. In other words, it leaves everything in a big, huge mess. Everything that it touches turns into a big, huge mess. And let me ask you, is that how you define your life right now? Or is that how you would define a portion of your life? Maybe like these things over here are going okay, but man, these things over here seem to be incredibly chaotic. There seems to be a lot of disorder. There seems to be a lot of confusion. There tends to be just a lot of insanity is what it feels like. Division, pain, hurt, all of these things are over here. Is that what it feels like? Because if so, I'll bet you can trace it back somewhere to a counterfeit wisdom. If you think about it and you sit and you dwell on it and you meditate on that, I'll bet you can trace that back somewhere to a counterfeit wisdom. Wisdom that came not from above, but from your own mind, could be. Because I know sometimes we're like, I got a great idea. Maybe we should have prayed about that first, right? Sometimes from that, sometimes from the mind of someone else who was lacking godly wisdom. And maybe it was a decision made from bitter jealousy or selfish ambition. Have you guys ever made a decision from bitter jealousy or selfish ambition? How'd that work out, right? Probably not so good, right? Yeah, this is all simple stuff that we really understand because we've seen it happen in our lives. We can pinpoint moments in our lives where we're like, yeah, no, this is so applicable to my life, right? But I think sometimes we just need to hear this because sometimes we get lost in all the chaos and all the division and everything that's going on, and we're like, what do I need to do? What you need is wisdom that has the fingerprints of God on it. That's what you need. You need to take away whatever happened. You need to start now and go, I need to find some wisdom to pour into this that have the fingerprints of God all over it, right? Because that isn't what God wants for us. He doesn't want that for our lives. 1 Corinthians 14:33 says, God is not a God of confusion, but of peace. God doesn't bring confusion. Where there's confusion, there's bitter jealousy. Where there's confusion, selfish ambition. God is not a God of confusion. He's a God of peace, and that's what he wants for our lives. He doesn't want the chaos. Now, I'm not saying that there won't be hardships in life. That's not what I'm saying. So don't think that, okay, then what God wants for my life is just a fine, easy life. That's not it. Scripture talks all the time about if you're going to follow after Jesus, you're going to have to pick up your cross, and you're going to have to follow him. Like, it's going to be difficult. But you guys understand there can be peace amidst difficulty, right? You guys understand there can be unity in the midst of difficulty. And that's what God wants for us. He's not a God of confusion. He doesn't want us just living in a confused state of mind. He wants us to be at peace. He's a giver of good gifts. God gives good gifts. God's wisdom may not lead to ease, but it does lead to a confident peace and a unity. And listen to how James describes that. He says, but the wisdom from above. He says, let me tell you about this for a second. The wisdom from above, that good gift wisdom, because again, God, all good gifts come from above, right? Good and perfect gifts. That wisdom from above is first pure. What does that mean? It means there is no hidden motive inside. You guys understand what it means to have something unpure. Like if you've got drinking water and you just put something impure in it, the whole thing is messed up. Like the wisdom from above, it doesn't have any other motive in there. It's just a pure motive. Then he says it's peaceable. That means that wisdom from above, it produces a calmness. That wisdom from above is gentle. All right, that means considerate of others. It has a softness to it. That's what that wisdom looks like. And I don't know if you need to think about this right now in the light of this is who I need to be, want to be. Am I doing a good job of this? Or if you need to look at this more in the light of somebody who's an example of this, or maybe you're struggling with a relationship right now where there doesn't seem to be a lot of peace, and now you're maybe looking at this going, okay, well, am I the one that's not bringing the peace into it, or are they the one that's not bringing the peace into it? Like what's I don't know how you need to hear this, but I'm just telling you what that wisdom from above looks like. It's pure, it's peaceable, it's gentle. It's gentle. That's considerate of others. Then he says it's open to reason. That wisdom is open to reason. That means it's, some translations say willing to yield. That means it's not stubborn, it's not arrogant. It's not that person who's like, it's my way or the highway. Have you ever been talking to someone before? And it's like, you just can't, you cannot get a word in because they're so stubborn, they're so arrogant. I've so been that person that's so stubborn and so arrogant, and I'll be that person again, I'm sure. But that's not a wisdom that comes from above. And so he says, it's open to reason. That means it's somebody who comes to the conversation and goes, I am actually willing to listen to you because I love you, because I respect you. That's what a wisdom from above looks like. It's not that lock in and just say, nah, I'm not going to listen to anything anybody has to say. I'm dealing with a family member right now, if I could throw some personal stuff in there. Not open to reason at all. And I cannot talk to this person. This person has shut me out for 2 years, and I literally cannot have a conversation with this person. It's defined by chaos, and I think it's because this person got some advice and wisdom that didn't have the fingerprints of God on him. And he's completely shut off. You guys, we see the tangible way this produces. Like it manifests itself. And I'm sure we all have stories like that. It's also, this wisdom that's from above is full of mercy and good fruits. That means it's overflowing with compassion. It's overflowing with tangible good works. Not just kindness here and there, all right? Not just a kindness here, I did my thing. No, it means that it's permeated with kindness all the time in your life. And then it says it's impartial. He talked about that earlier in James. That's the person who treats everyone with the same respect. Every person, doesn't matter who they are, everybody gets the same respect. That's the wisdom that comes from above. And also it's sincere. That means there's no hypocrisy. There's no hidden agenda. There's just genuine, authentic faith that shows up in both words and action. Both words and in your actions. In this verse right here, where he's like, man, he describes all the chaos of this false wisdom, this counterfeit wisdom. And then you get this verse in 17, and it's almost like a breath of fresh air. It's like, man, I understand the chaos. And I don't know about you guys, but isn't it good to know that we don't have to live in the chaos? Maybe you find yourself right now living in a chaos somehow, some way. We might not have to. And if we will seek that wisdom that has the fingerprints of God all over it, then we may actually just get to go, you know what? I'm erasing that part. I'm putting it behind me, and I'm going to move forward in this. Like it's just a breath of fresh air. And this wisdom that he talks about, it's way less stressful. How many of you guys have just lived stressful parts of your life because you just made some decisions based on some bad wisdom? Man, that is no fun, right? I hate being stressed out whenever I do that kind of stuff. But this wisdom that God offers, it's less stressful. It's full of joy. It lacks chaos. Wow, that just sounds amazing. And this is what we want. And so the third point I want you to write down is true wisdom builds up. True wisdom builds up. God's wisdom, think about this. God's wisdom is rooted in his character, and it reflects his nature. That's God's wisdom. It's rooted in his character, and it also reflects his nature. This wisdom from above, it sounds like Jesus, doesn't it? All of those things, think about that. All the things that we just mentioned, I just think about Jesus. He was pure in motive. He was gentle with sinners, including myself. He was firm with hypocrites. He was merciful to the broken. He was impartial to the rich or poor. Didn't matter. And he was always sincere. He was always sincere. And so this is the checklist for wisdom. When you think you're being wise, ask yourself, does it look like this list? Or does it look more like jealousy or competition or pride? We can look at those things. Here's a quick rule of thumb. If it doesn't look like Jesus, it's not wisdom from Jesus. Okay? If it doesn't look like Jesus, then it's not wisdom from Jesus. And here's how James finishes. He's in verse 18 right here. He says this, and a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Guys, this is such a rich, very rich and profound verse. A harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. Real quick, I'll give you the point. Number 4, last one, true wisdom sows peace. All right? True wisdom sows peace. You reap what you sow. If you plant an apple seed, you get what? An apple tree, right? If you plant godly wisdom, you will get righteousness. And that sounds great. You're like, I need to write that down, I think. Like, I'll get righteousness. That's awesome. And as I was looking at this passage, and I was like, man, you get a harvest of righteousness. Like, I literally was like, in my brain, I was like, how can we make righteousness desirable? Because doesn't this need to be desirable? Righteousness needs to be something that's desired. Like, or else why would I chase after it? Like, what's so good about righteousness that I need to like change my life to try and achieve it? So allow me to try to make righteousness desirable for just a second. What righteousness means that he says can be harvested, it just means a life lived in line with God's design. That's what that is. That's what that righteous life is. It's a life that is lived in line with God's design. Psalm 1 paints the righteous person as a tree. Just imagine this real quick. He gives us this imagery of a righteous person. It's like it's like a tree that is planted by streams of water. It's rooted by streams of water. It's fruitful, it's strong, and it's unshaken by storms. That's what a righteous life produces in your life. It produces a life that is fruitful and strong and unshaken by storms. That's what righteousness can produce, right? The unrighteous person is rootless. They're just tossed around. It's just chaotic again, right? It's empty. That's what a life of unrighteousness is going to bring. It is going to make you tired. It is going to make you stressed out. And you are going to at some point hit rock bottom and go, I should have just listened to God in the first place. I should have just chased after righteousness in the first place. That's what that would do. People today, not sure if it's you or not, they're longing for peace in their homes. They're longing for healing in their relationships. They're longing for just relief from the unsettled feelings that they have inside. Can anybody identify with any of that? Yeah. Inner turmoil. Inner pain. Sometimes it's not even the stuff on the outside. Sometimes it's just the stuff on the inside. And James is saying righteousness, a life lived in line with God's design, is the answer. And wisdom from above is the pathway there. That's how we can have that righteous life. Listen, faith seeks wisdom. Faith seeks wisdom. Worldly wisdom tears apart. If you don't remember anything else, remember this. Worldly wisdom tears apart. Godly wisdom builds up. And here's a little thing so you can remember it. The difference isn't in what you know. The difference is in what you sow. Okay? Remember it that way. When we're talking about wisdom, the difference is not what you know. The difference is in what you sow, what you put out there. You're gonna reap a harvest of whatever it is that you're sowing, okay? And I love the practicality of this whole thing right here. And as I've been building this sermon, I've just been thinking through my own life and going, okay, where is there godly wisdom? Where is there worldly wisdom? What is going on in my life that is an effect of godly wisdom? What is going on in my life that is an effect of worldly wisdom? And that's something that I think that we can all think about this week as you listen to whoever you're gonna go listen to next, as you turn on whatever podcast it is that you're gonna turn on next. Guys, have discernment. What are you listening to? Who's the person that you're listening to? What's surrounding their life? Is this truly wisdom that we need to be listening to? I'm going to close out with this. And so if you guys would just bow your heads just for a second, I want to give you each just a chance to just think through maybe what it is the Lord is kind of maybe showing you, and that you're probably going to be needing to think through this for a little while. But I want to give you the opportunity to start that just right now. So with your heads bowed, I just want to just say a few things and try not to fall asleep. Try to listen to this. Here's the truth. You and I don't naturally have this wisdom. We don't naturally have that kind of wisdom. Left to ourselves, we default to envy, selfishness, and pride. So if you're in here going, man, I feel envious, selfish, and prideful, don't worry, you're in good company, bad company. That's why James says earthly wisdom is demonic. It's the natural produce of our sinful hearts. But the good news is this. Here's the good news. Jesus is the wisdom of God. He lived perfectly, pure, perfectly peaceable, perfectly merciful, perfectly sincere. He sowed peace even as he was nailed to the cross, as he prayed, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. And he reaped a harvest of righteousness when he rose from the dead. He defeated death and sin. And when you put your faith in Jesus, his spirit fills you and he begins to change the soil of your heart. He uproots that envy. And what does he do? He plants mercy. He waters peace. And he slowly but surely develops in your life and begins to put in something that looks like his wisdom instead. His wisdom. So the invitation today, all right, it's simple. If you don't know Christ, if you've never put your faith and trust in Jesus, don't chase the world's wisdom. It will leave you empty. Instead, come to the one who is wisdom and trust him as Savior. And if you do know Christ and you're sitting in this room, examine the fruit of your life, as he said to do in that first verse. Examine the fruit of your life. What are you sowing with your words? What are you sowing with your decisions? What are you sowing in your relationships? And if it looks more like envy and strife, don't try harder, just come back to Jesus. Don't try hard. Don't say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try. No, just come back to Jesus. Ask him for wisdom. James already promised it in chapter 1. He said, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given to him.